All right, today we're diving deep into a really significant military event called Operation Epic Fury. We're going to sift through all the noise, the early reports, the official lines, and the hard evidence to figure out what we actually know for sure.
I mean, the story kicked off with some pretty explosive claims. Headlines were everywhere suggesting a massive U.S. strike campaign against Iran was launched from bases in the United Arab Emirates. But is that really what went down?
So, what we're going to do is follow the trail of actual, verifiable information. We're going to separate fact from fiction and really break down what's confirmed, what's just credible, and what's still totally unproven. Okay, so first things first, let's start with what we know for sure about the operation itself. So the official name was Operation Epic Fury. We know it involved both U.S. and Israeli forces, and it kicked off on February 28, 2026, with strikes across Iran. But here's the kicker. The official description said it was launched from air, land, and sea capabilities. Now that little phrase, air, land, and sea, that's where things get murky, and it's right at the heart of our investigation. All right, so now let's talk about the hardware. What weapons have actually been confirmed to have been used in this campaign? First up is a weapons system that you've probably heard of before, the Tomahawk cruise missile, a real long-range precision workhorse. Yeah, and the public data on this thing is pretty clear. It's got an incredible range, we're talking about 1,000 miles, and its guidance system is super advanced. It uses GPS, its own internal navigation, and even maps the terrain below it to find its target with pinpoint accuracy. That's what makes it the perfect tool for these long-distance strikes launched from out at sea. And we don't have to guess about this one. We've got solid proof. U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM, actually released pictures of U.S. Navy destroyers launching these very missiles. So right there, we have a clear, verified launch point for at least part of this whole operation, the sea. Okay, so the second weapon we know about is a new player on the battlefield. It's called LUCAS, which stands for Low Cost Unmanned Combat Attack System. Basically, it's a one-way attack drone, and this was its combat debut, used by a brand new unit called Task Force Scorpion Strike. Now, these drones are pretty versatile. They can be launched from a catapult, with a rocket booster, or even from mobile trucks. But here's the really crucial part. While we know the task force is based somewhere in the Middle East, none of the public information tells us which country they're operating from. That's a huge question mark. And make no mistake, this was a big deal. CENTCOM itself confirmed this was the first time the LUCAS system was ever used in combat. So we're literally watching a new chapter in drone warfare being written right here. Okay, so we've got our confirmed weapons, Tomahawks from the sea, and LUCAS drones from, well, somewhere on land. Now we can finally tackle that central question. What about the claims that these strikes came from the UAE? And this is where we get to the core of the issue. On one hand, you have all these media reports saying, yep, the US launched strikes from the UAE. But on the other hand, you have a super clear official statement from the UAE saying, absolutely not. But here's where the timing gets really, really interesting. The UAE's denial wasn't a knee-jerk reaction after the strikes happened. They put out that statement on January 26th. That's a full month before Operation Epic Fury even started. Geopolitically, that's a huge deal. It looks like a very deliberate move to draw a line in the sand and signal, hey, we are not getting involved in this. All right, now let's follow the evidence trail to the other end. Let's look at the impacts on the ground inside Iran. What can we actually confirm was hit? So thanks to open source intelligence, basically stuff that's publicly available, we have clear proof of impacts. For example, check out this satellite imagery. It shows a warship literally on fire at the Tomahawk naval base. You can't argue with that. The damage is real. But, and this is the key takeaway here, while we can see the result, the evidence itself, the satellite photo, it doesn't tell us what hit it. And it certainly doesn't tell us where that weapon came from. We see the what happened, but not the how or the from where. And you know what? We see this exact same pattern across multiple strike sites. Looking at the big picture, the whole campaign, we have high confidence that Tomahawks and LUCAS drones were used because CENTCOM told us so. But when you zoom in on a specific impact site, whether it's in Tehran, Minab, or here at Konarak, our confidence in saying, aha, that was a LUCAS drone just plummets. The specific granular evidence just isn't publicly available. Which brings us to the final and maybe most important part of our investigation. What's missing from the evidence locker? So, to actually prove that these strikes came from the UAE, an analyst would need a smoking gun, right? We're talking about high grade evidence, like geolocated video of a launch from inside the UAE, or maybe satellite images showing scorch marks at a UAE airbase. You need verified flight data, or, of course, an official admission from the US or the UAE. And the bottom line is, so far, none of that has surfaced.
So here's our conclusion. Based on all the verifiable information that's out there, the claim that these strikes were launched from the UAE, well, it directly contradicts official statements. And more importantly, it's not backed up by any hard public evidence. So it has to remain what it is, an unproven hypothesis, not a confirmed fact. And really, this whole case is a perfect example of something so critical today. In a world of instant information, how do we know what's actually real? It shows us that learning to separate a confirmed fact from a credible but unproven report from a flat-out allegation, that's maybe the most important skill we have. It's not just about what we hear, it's about what we can actually prove.